my first time. It was a moving experience. And the reason why I went there was to, actually it was a kind of a short-term mission trip. I went to teach pastors about leadership, about the concept of there being more to leading the church than getting up on Sunday and preaching. There were some things that had to happen during the course of the week in order to get the people that you're responsible for to the place that they needed to be. And as we were beginning this course of study, they made a presentation to us. And this was in Nairobi, Kenya. We didn't know what it was going to be about. We didn't know that they were going to make a presentation. But the presentation was to me, not because of anything I had done, because they really didn't know a whole lot about me, which is probably just as well. But they saw that I was African American. And the presentation that they made, and there were representatives from Kenya, of course, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Tanzania, the Sudan. There was a lot of stuff going on in the Sudan then. I was surprised that anybody was there. And from South Africa. And the presentation that they made was in the nature of an apology for what they had done to my people who were now in the United States hundreds of years ago, as they were complicit in the slave trade. Because whether you know it or not, the slave trade was made possible by Africans making other Africans available to be transported across the water. It was somewhat awkward that they would start off this way, but it was fitting. And they taught me some things that I didn't know. And I bring that up to you because before I share anything with you, I have some things that I want to get off my chest. Your opposition to the death penalty may or may not define you. But the fact of the matter is, we're dealing with a group of people who were wrongfully convicted and innocent. Think about that. America doesn't deal well with innocence. America doesn't deal very well with not guilty, but they deal better with not guilty than they do with innocence. And as I stated this morning, you, better than most folks, know what the defense counsel contributed to that process. I want you to think about that for a while, because that's what this is all about. To start, we need to deal with that in the jump. Defense counsel, drugged, drunk, asleep, incompetent, insensitive, arrogant. The biggest problem in the defender community is not funding. The Attorney General has stated that there is a defense crisis in this nation. There is some funding problems, I won't deny that. But the biggest problem the defense counsel has, and I'm a career defense counsel, I'm invested in this, is how we interact with the people we represent. Because I dare say, there's someone in this room, somebody who was on death row, that was there in part because their defense counsel did something they weren't supposed to, or didn't do something they were supposed to. Let's be real. So without going any further, before I share with you some insights from a native son. I want to apologize to you from the National Legal Aid and Defender Association, who represents all public defenders across this nation. Appointed counsel, alternate defenders. As the Vice President of Defender Legal Services, I first want to start off by apologizing to you for the part the defense counsel have played in your being wrongfully convicted people who are innocent. And I hope that you will find it in your heart to forgive those of us who were arrogant enough to think that we didn't need you in doing what we did or doing what we do. I hope you will find it in your heart to forgive those of us who think that the people that we represent is an afterthought. That needs to be said. The cards need to be on the table, face up, so that you know exactly where I'm coming from. Because I'm not here as a matter of right. I couldn't say this morning that I'm honored to be here, because I don't even know if I should be here. Because as a part of a profession who has played so much a part in you being here, I don't know if I deserve to be honored to be here.
It's how you make it right, right?
And I can't go back and change that. But what I can do is devote everything that I have and bring it. So, what I'm going to share with you is going to be a beginning. This is a beginning. I hope, if the good Lord wills, this will not be the last time you see me. But I want you to know, whatever our relationship grows to be, that I do not come among you from a position of power, but with a position of commitment to the cause that you have. Because the position of power didn't help you back when it counted. Defense counsels have a lot of power. And to this date, we haven't learned how to use it effectively. Part of my mission, to get defenders nationwide to use that power in the right way. And the promise that I make to you is that until the good Lord takes my last breath, I will be more worried about how defense counsels do their job than the money they make or the money they get. So I want to get that off my chest before we even start. And I'm not going to share anything with you that Witness to Innocence hasn't considered already. You have some very able people who are handling strategy for the organization. Know that. But understand that what you will see above the surface is nothing compared to what goes on below the surface. It's like an iceberg. It's just like the death penalty abolition in Illinois. As I was telling Nate this morning, that started almost 15 years ago. And it took a long time. It may take a long time for you to accomplish your goals of getting the right compensation for individuals who are wrongfully convicted and who are innocent. You will note that I scrupulously avoid using the term exoneree. And the reason why I avoid using that term is because people can too easily dismiss it. They need to be told every time I speak that I'm talking about innocent people who are wrongfully convicted. Because people somewhere they think that you're not innocent. They think that the Constitution is a technicality. They think that even if they beat a confession out of you, it's still a confession. So we need to think about what we need to say every time we open our, I need to think, every time I open my mouth, the point that I need to get across. And every time I talk about witness to innocence, I'm going to be talking about individuals who were wrongfully convicted and who are innocent. Because people need to get that point. I came not because, to be quite honest with you, not because I really had anything earth-shattering to share with you. I came to learn your story. From 9 o'clock this morning to 11 o'clock was huge for me. Larry said that it would be. And he said that I needed to be here. And I needed to be here. And let me, in case I forget, the point was made this morning that you are more than your story. That you're not just a canned story. That's true. You are advocates for one of the most important causes this nation has ever seen. You are advocates. But the story is so important. And I tell you that because defense counsel, and I don't know why this is the case since we have to argue before juries, are the worst storytellers I've ever come across. I can't understand it. It's just like when I go to cultural competence. I teach cultural competence for the American Bar Association. The individuals who don't show up, defense counsel, because they don't think they need it. That's our problem. As defense counsel, that's something you need to keep in mind, because you need to advocate for that too. Because they need to show up. We need to show up. You need to demand that defense counsel show up. That the American Council of Chief Defenders show up. That we do what we can, because in large part we created this mess. We were a part of a system that didn't work. So, as part of the National Legal Aid and Defender Association, we're celebrating our 100th year. We're devoted to equal justice. Now, if justice was equal, you wouldn't have a bunch of people dedicated to equal justice. No. So think about that. There are a lot of different fights to advocate for in equal justice. Mass incarceration. There's a book about that. The new kind of racial control. Not going there. But you need to know that there are a lot of different issues. This one is literally a matter of life and death. We're not talking about control here. We're talking about life and death. And that's what makes the concept of innocence and the death penalty on an equal par. Because we don't have any way in this country or any other country to separate the two. There is no way we can be certain that the individuals that we execute are guilty. Cluskey versus Georgia established the fact that there are a whole lot of factors that go into death penalty that have nothing to do with whether or not you have the right person. And still didn't have the courage to overturn the death penalty nationwide. Because in this country, and I love this country, I was in the service of this country for 19 years. I had orders to Vietnam when when Nixon stopped sending people to Vietnam. Excuse me, President Nixon. And I would have gone. Was I anxious to go and kill? No. I would have done it though. So I love this country. There are some things that this country just doesn't get right. And this country right now is deterred from the path of justice. So let's talk about that. What is justice? What is equal justice? People in my line of work are saying it's all about the right to counsel. And the biggest argument I have with the individuals that I work with is equal justice is more than just a right to counsel. It's a right to counsel that's effective. It's about standards to make sure you do what you're supposed to do when an individual is banking on you to save his or her life. It means that you have to know about the person that you represent, because that person is not just another number. It's a human being. And see, one of the reasons why this country, and I'm telling you this, not because I'm preaching, but because these are some things that we have to take into account as we strategize to overcome this problem that America has with innocence. Because when you start talking about innocence and the failure of the justice system to identify and separate it from those individuals who are guilty, that means that I made a mistake. That I screwed up. That the justice system that pays my salary doesn't work. That means that either I'm going to become complicit, I'm going to be a part of it, and not be a real lawyer, or I'm going to buck the system. Now, there are a bunch of public defenders around the nation who have done that. You know what happened to them? They lost their jobs. That's okay. When you get to the point, and this is my thing, when you get to the point where you're in the corner office, in a public defender office, you become the war shield of the king. That means that you give it up for the individuals that you represent, that you use that corner office to help the people that your lawyers, your support staff, and your investigators represent. Now, this is not what defense counsel want to hear. This is not what prosecutors want to hear. This is not what judges want to hear. This is not what governors want to hear. And I suggest to you, and I'm not bipartisan. I am not partisan to any political party. Okay? Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, I don't care. But the president doesn't want to hear it either. You know, they said the first black president was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton put more people in jail who were African American than any president in history. And you know what? President Obama's on his way. So, you know, I am happy that we elected the first African American president. But that doesn't mean that I care about his policies and the things that he does or doesn't do for equal justice. I have to evaluate him not by the color of his skin, but the content of his character. So, I look at justice as a big house. There are a lot of things that are a part of it. That means that there ought to be a wing for actual innocence. And I keep mentioning that because that's the part that's so hard for me to believe. And I think as we employ our strategy, and let there be no doubt about it, it will be us. Hopefully, if you will invite us to the table, we will be at the table helping you devise this strategy, because this is going to be a long haul. Because I'm telling you the reasons why it's going to be a long haul. because we don't deal with innocence correctly in this country. And there's a big house, and we ought to have a wing of it. Witness to innocence ought to have a wing of it. And it's the precepts that you're about. Because abolition of the death penalty is just about human dignity. It respects life in a way that most people who want to put you to death will tell you you can't do when it comes to a woman's reproductive freedom. So, we have to strategize to meet all of those problems. Because I don't deal with innocence the way I should. So when I talk to somebody, even about witness to innocence, I don't use the term exonerees. I use the term wrongfully convicted innocence with a TS, so that people get the message every time I talk that we're talking about innocent people here. And this factually innocent, okay, I don't want to go there, but that offends me. Because we deal much better with not guilty than we do with innocence. So these are things that we have to strategize against. So I'm here to say that there are some things that we should consider in our long journey to the big house. You know, we're familiar with the house. When a guy scores a touchdown, what do we say? Took it to the house. He hits a home run, took it to the house. We want to get to the house. That's our goal. The house is the goal. We got to get there. For America's sake, we got to get there. This defines the character of the nation. Right now, we're not doing so well. We're putting more people in jail, putting more people to death than some third world countries. And this is a rhetorical question, especially in this audience. How can you be so passionately empathetic with individuals who have done what they were charged with? And I am. I'm passionate about helping those men and women get to where they need to be. I'm passionate about that. How can I be indifferent to individuals who didn't even commit what they were charged with? I can't resolve that. And I'm here to tell you that neither can the rest of America. This hits home, folks. Just like I tell defense counsel, and I stated it this morning, when you meet your client, you got some obstacles you have to overcome. You are not God's gift to your client. Although that client is the reason you have a job, if you were to leave today and not come back, that client's life may not change. But I want to tell you that we have some obstacles to overcome. But this is right, ladies and gentlemen. This is justice. And we have to succeed. We have to win this battle. I am not like the guy on 2.5 Men. Sheen? Charlie, yeah. It's not all about winning. Some things you have to win. And we have to first fight it like we're going to win. We have to convince ourselves that this is something we got to win. And to be quite honest with you, we got to win it because we love this country. But we got to make this country live up to what it's supposed to do. But that's going to be hard. And I want to tell you that it's going to be hard. Because you have to know going in, cards on the table, face up. that there are people who don't want to hear what you have to say. They don't want to deal with the concept that you've had to live with. They don't want to understand PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. They don't want to understand that. They don't even want to concede that you have it. I don't know if you had it or not, but if Nate says you have it, I believe it. So, where do we go from here? What do we do with these obstacles? One of the reasons why witness to innocence has been effective and will continue to be effective is that there are certain principles that have been obvious in its actions from the time I met them. Well, let me correct that. They were actually effective with these principles before I met them. I just learned about them since I met them. And they told me, no, they taught me a lot about what I should be about in equal justice. Fairness. Now, obviously, was fairness to Rick Perry. It's not fairness to me. Okay? So that's something that different individuals may define differently. But I told the commanding general once when I was the chief prosecutor that in my office, individuals who are not guilty should not even go to trial, and we should find out about that beforehand. And believe me, as a prosecutor, I had the resources to find out. You know, in most places where we live, they have 10 or more law enforcement agencies that are helping. So we have, I know that prosecutors, and the prosecutor in Dallas knows that we can be fair. Now, I don't know what turn his career will take, but that's some very courageous moves. Because I understand within a year of taking over that job, he reviewed all death penalty cases, personally. We'll see. But the thing is that Americans are supposed to understand the concept of fairness. We have to put them to the test. But that's a principle that has underlined all the actions that I know of that Witness to Innocence has taken. Transparency. Let's find out who's doing what. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Tea Party, ultra-liberal, communist, socialist. The one thing you should agree on is that you should have a government that tells you the truth about what it's doing. If they're spending more money on re-entry than they are on no entry, then they ought to tell you. If folks who committed the offense are getting more money than people who didn't, they ought to tell you. If they're going to try to put innocent people on the street without any compensation, people ought to know about it. Let's get the truth out there, and let's tell people what's going on, which gets to some other principles. Collaboration. Since Larry, Randy, and Nate visited our office to tell us about Witness to Innocence, they've been busy, visiting people, telling people, spreading the word, reaching out to get partners. And some of them have kind of been some unlikely candidates. I mean, you wouldn't expect that Mark Kirk from Illinois would necessarily a Republican, somewhat of conservative background. You wouldn't expect that he'd be an individual who would be running to our cause. Well, you know, you don't know until you ask him. He's been approached. You know, that's something, that spirit of collaboration has been, look, what we're about is the right thing. We're going to give it to you, cards on the table, face up. and let you make the decision whether or not this is a justice issue you can be involved with. We're willing to work with you. As they said to us, and I think that message has been to everybody they've been, the spirit of collaboration. You know, maybe it's a good thing that there are no lawyers involved in this, you know, because it hasn't been an effort to close ranks and to keep people out. It's been an effort to reach out. There's power in that. That's a powerful principle. Uniformity. Well, the concept of innocence means that we're going to have to deal with making sure that we treat everybody who comes through the system the same way. And there's going to have to be an appropriate dealing with individuals who committed the offense and individuals who didn't. And we're going to have to find a uniform way of doing that. So the concept of uniformity is important. Efficiency. Now, I would venture to say that there's probably a lot of people in this room who are liberal. The Tea Party folks are more conservative than the conservatives. But even they will concede that the way we're doing things now is not efficient. It's costing taxpayers a lot of money. And the biggest reason why the death penalty fell in Illinois is because it would be too expensive to do it right. If there's a such thing as killing people, to show that killing people is not right. If you accept that premise, it was too expensive to do it right. I had the prosecutor, when I was public defender, the prosecutor, Dick Devine, tells me, he said, people are going to have to make a choice. They're going to either have to pay for it, or they're going to have to get rid of it. And he says, I'm at the point now that I just want them to make a decision. I'll do the people's will, but I don't want to do it if we're not going to do it right. So, those principles have been at work. And I just have a few things I want to share with you in terms of strategies that I hope that we'll be working on going forward. First of all, the concept is it's not about you without you. The slide says that exonerees have been involved in every part of the process. They've been informed about it. So nothing should happen without you. It can't be without you. Without you. Or no, it can't be about you without you. So that means that I will never be in a position about talking down to you about what you should do. You will always have the right of refusal over the advice that I or anybody else in my organization offers, because we're here to serve. That's a novel concept in leadership. And some of you wrongfully convicted innocents don't know it yet. But your input is so important. We are about to partner NLADA with an organization called the National Homecomers Association. This is a group of individuals who have been to prison and have come out and are now paying it forward in terms of going into their communities and making positive change. From walking little kids to school and going so that they don't get into trouble. The high school people don't pick on them, and the gangsters stay away from them. They move into neighborhoods so that they can get rid of the gang problems, because they talk to these individuals and they listen. If they stop an individual with his trousers around his knees, he's going to listen. And they may not even mention the fact that his trousers are down around his knees. But when he walks away, he's going to know where they stand about his involvement in their community. There are things that you can tell people that nobody else can. I can't do it. You got board members who can't do it, because they haven't been there. So as important as the staff and the board is, there are some wrongfully convicted innocents in this room. And some of them are not in this room yet, but they will heal, Emma. And one is on his way. You can do this, but you can't do it if you don't do it. Because it can't be about you without you. So, first of all, the problems that I have mentioned means that there are some things that have to happen. And we have to do it consciously. I would suggest that you consider public education. America needs to go to school on what innocence means. Innocence does not mean not guilty. Now, if you stop 10 people on the street and ask them the difference, I don't know that you'd be able to get a right answer. Therein lies a big problem. We have got to educate the public on the difference, and we may never even mention not guilty, but they've got to know what innocence means. And I don't care what problem you direct that to, whether it's armed robbery or the ultimate penalty. Innocence is different. When I was trying death cases, we always said to my bosses, when I was trying a death case, death is different. I need some things, and you have to do some things for me that you wouldn't do in another case. I need this, I need that. I need to travel here, because this is literally a matter of life and death. So if you're going to put me on report, put me on report, but give me what I need to try the case. I have had the experience of having a client sentenced to death row, and it sent me to the hospital for a month. That was not a good feeling. And I thank the Lord for Governor Ryan. And don't think that he didn't go to jail because of what he did. There were politicians doing what he did all over the place. And the nexus to him was thin. But he was going to go to jail because there was going to be some payback. You got to have individuals who are willing to pay that price. George Ryan was a war shield of the king. That king is justice. I don't think he would have any regrets about what he did. But he was instrumental. So we have to educate the public that there is a difference between not guilty and innocent. Now, one of the ways you do that, again, is the story. What do witnesses do? Somebody?
Testify.
They testify. Now, I will never tell you that that defines a witness, but it's an important part of the witness. Don't ever forget your testimony. Because I don't know if they told you this when you visited the Hill, but they tell us every time we have an issue, they tell us, get us the stories. I can't tell you how many times I've gone over our listserv and told individuals, I need stories. And you know what it's going to come down to? At our annual conferences, we're going to have to teach people in my community, Defense Council, on how to tell stories. Because they do such a bad job. You have an edge up because you have recognized how important that is. But more importantly, you recognize the place that has in your mission. So that's important. There was a mention earlier today, I think it was by Larry, of a communications plan. Woo, that's hard. Communication is hard. I'm on the board of directors in my church, and we had this list that people sign when they come to church. So that if an individual didn't show up, we could check up on them. Well, people don't like Big Brother watching. You know, they don't like signing in and signing out. So we said, you know, we have two ladies after church who are taking these sheets and they go into the office and nothing happens. I said, if there's not a compelling thing that's done with these, then maybe we ought to stop the process. Well, we talked about it, and we stopped the process because we thought, one, if they're going to sign in, there needs to be an important reason for them signing in. And two, if we're not going to do anything after they sign in, why have them sign in? So we stopped. Come to find out that those ladies were looking at those lists before they sent it to the office and getting the first-time visitors and sending them letters with their own money. So that the people who visited us weren't asked to join the church, but they're saying, you know, welcome. If there's anything we can do for you, let us know. Contact us if you need something. That's important. So they were offended. And we made this decision, and we didn't consult them. Well, when I found out, I was offended too. And I made a decision. That I made this decision without consulting the people at the point of contact. That's one of my cardinal rules. And I got sucked into doing something different. One of my cardinal rules is no decisions ought to be made without contacting those at the point of contact. That's why when I was public defender, we didn't go down and state for legislation unless the trial lawyers said it was something good for our clients. If they didn't say it was something good for our clients, we didn't need to be supporting it down in Springfield. So this communication thing, and I went up to one of them Sunday because I said, look, I got to apologize about this because they got to know that this wasn't disrespect to them. We just screwed up. So I went up to them, one of them, this Sunday, past Sunday after church, and she looked at me and she said, you don't need to send me no letter. She said, I know what it was. It was just a communication screw up. Communication is hard. Communication from one committee to the next is hard. How hard is it to communicate to a waiting public that doesn't want to hear what you have to say going to be? We need to seriously get this communication plan tight. It needs to be tight because that determines what your messaging will be. You may determine that you don't want to use the term exoneree. I don't know if you will or you won't. That's a decision for you to make. I've made my decision, but you have you have far more expertise in this than I do. But the thing is, the point is, messaging is important. What you say sends a message. And when I tell individuals that I'm here to talk about individuals who were wrongfully convicted and are innocent, they look at me different than when I talk about exonerees. The chairman of our client policy group was wrongfully convicted, and he was innocent. His name is Darrell Hunt from North Carolina. And he sits on our board of directors, so he's one of my bosses. I have several clients on our board of directors that I report to. We are dealing with internally whether client is the term we want to use to define the people that we serve. We're thinking about client advocates, community leaders, because all the individuals that we serve are not clients. And And we have to be able to distinguish that. And I say that to say that messaging is so very important. So we need to think about what we say. Long ago, I stopped using the term delinquency courts. Delinquency means it's the same thing in the juvenile system as guilty is in the adult system. So when you talk about delinquency courts, that's just like calling them guilty courts. That means that everybody who goes there, before they've been proven guilty, is called guilty. That's a very nuanced decision. But what we say sends messages. So we need to make sure that we say exactly what we mean. Partnerships. I mentioned this morning that every time somebody is wrongfully convicted, that means whoever did it hasn't been brought to justice. You know who can identify with that? Victims. I know it because they told me so. Their biggest concern, and they will say, don't come talk to me about public safety. Talk to me about community safety. And part of community safety is knowing that the individual who did this is the individual who's being held accountable. For each story that you have about an individual who was wrongfully convicted, there's an individual who hasn't been made accountable for their acts. That impacts public safety and community safety. One of your biggest allies should be victims. I suggest to you that's an untapped resource because when victims talk, the political reality is people, communities, police, politicians listen. There's a communication strategy there and a partnership strategy that we need to look into. Our part, NLADA's part, is going to be thinking about what other partners we need to bring to the table that can effectively support, underline support, highlight it, because it doesn't mean run. It means support. Nobody from outside Witness to Innocence should be running your strategy. Witness to Innocence needs to be running your strategy because it can't be about you without you. So support. NLADA will support you. We will not run it for you. We will not speak and expect the sky to open or the sky to part. Oh, well, lawyers, we ought to be used to people ignoring our advice. So, we need, NLADA needs to be thinking and have been thinking about the types of individuals that we can bring to the table, that we can establish these relationships with, that will give us that oomph we need when legislation time comes. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to the big house. And when we come, we're going to bring it. Because this is right. And this is a battle we cannot lose. Because there's a country that hangs in the balance. And I want to tell you that the brain power to get this done, when I leave, will be in this room. You can get it done. You don't need me. You don't need NLADA. And that's the reason why, having put the cards on the table face up, I'm honored to be here. Because I want to be a part of this. I want some of this. Because it's got to come. Because I would have given my life to a country who doesn't have some things straight. And for boys and girls to go across the water, to give their lives from here forth, we want them to do it for a country who's got it right. Because you can't establish over there what you want to establish here. Nothing I've told you is not something that you have not considered already. But what I'm here to tell you is that there are folks that are willing to work with you, to support you. And if we can bring them to the table, we think we can bring them to the table. We expect that we will be able to bring them to the table. But understand what our relationship is. I am not holier than thou. I am not more intelligent than thou. Well, I have a resource coordinator that helps me who's smarter than I am. Okay? I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But I know who to work with. And I know what's right and what's wrong. And you know what? That sense of right and wrong, can't nobody here, can't nobody in Congress, can't nobody in the White House, can't nobody in Illinois, Washington, D.C., or Maryland take away from me. That's what the good Lord gave me. And I'll serve him till I die. And I want you to know that not only is this personal, this is spiritual to me. Okay? And that's who I'll ultimately answer to. This is something I have to do. This is a battle we have to fight. And it's a battle that we have to win. Because ladies and gentlemen, we're going to the big house. Any questions?